Welcome to Houston. I am Kendall Butler, the real realtor of Houston. And if you don't know, now you know, all right? My start in real estate, oh my goodness. So we gotta rewind it back because I didn't realize until I was talking to my daughter that I was walking home from elementary school at 7 and 8 years old, looking at the houses, like going the way my mama told me not to go because I just wanted to look at the homes. But I got my start in real estate because I've always enjoyed going into looking at the model homes or just driving around like, oh, that's so neat, that's so cool, whatever, when it comes to homes. And I would always have friends when they were like moving places. I'm like, ooh, I think there's a really cute apartment community we can look at or something. And even when I had moved to different areas, because I was in the military, I did 14 years in the United States Navy. Hoo-yah, go Navy, beat Army. But even when I moved there, I think I previewed something like 20 different apartment communities just because I wanted to see what all of them looked like, what all did they offer, who had the best deals, you know, who's gonna give the best rebates and all this other stuff. So I guess I got my start in real estate just for having a love of real estate, a love of looking at different homes. So I am from Greenville, South Carolina. We are not this little country, podunk little town that everybody would like to make us. We are actually on the map in the top 50 places in the United States to live at. Thank you very much. But yeah, born and raised, I came from a blue collar working family. My dad was a truck driver. My mom, she was a cop, and then she became a homemaker where she was able to be there for me and my brother with anything we had going on. And me, I was always involved in some sort of an activity, a dance, an extracurricular, a committee, a board, all these things. So I kept my mama needing to put gas in her tank. And now that I have a child that is involved in a lot of different things, I'm sorry, Mom. I probably shouldn't have done so much stuff all the time. But no, I came from a very loving family. My grandparents, they played a very big part in raising me when I wasn't with my mom. She was a single mom at that. And then when I was 8 is when she met my father. And that's when, you know, I had the great 2-parent household that we all desire, right? So my grandmother, she was a nurse. My grandfather, he was a mechanic. He had the first Black brake shop in Greenville, South Carolina on Pendleton Street. It's no longer there. Just went home for Christmas last year or year before last. And to see that there's nothing there, it's like all those memories of that parking lot. I remember so many big things that happened in my life from being at Butler's Brake Shop. So I had a very good beginning, very, very humble beginning that led me to, I gotta get the heck up out of here. I don't wanna be in Greenville, South Carolina anymore. So graduated high school. I had almost a 4.0 GPA, but I decided college was not for me. At that time, I couldn't even get myself up. I still can't get myself up early in the mornings. Maybe next year it'll be better or something, I don't know. Because I couldn't get myself up to even make it on time. Like my mom was still waking me up and I'm graduating from high school. So I didn't want to go to college and waste money, not really even knowing what I wanted to do, because I didn't know what I wanted to even go to college for. It's just what they told you to do when you graduate. You're supposed to go to college. Graduated at 17 and already was enlisted, basically. I already had sworn in to go to the Navy. So September 2003, I left from Greenville, South Carolina and headed on up to Chicago, Illinois to go to boot camp for 2 months. Spent, 2 months. We left in November and went to Pensacola. I went to Pensacola, Florida and was there for like a month for my A school and went up to Norfolk, Virginia. It's naval bases everywhere. So everybody that's out there is military, and the military is an amazing career. It's an amazing path to go on when you're trying to find your way and if you're trying to figure out what you want to do. But I believe that people have other options that they maybe don't even think to take advantage of because it wasn't presented, or this is what the options were that were presented. So the military definitely helped me with being able to get some sort of structure in my life and it paid for my college. So even though I didn't know what I wanted to do, I wasn't wasting anybody else's money, and it gave me a what? VA home loan. And that's where I got my start at in real estate. Well, not really that's where I got my start, but that's where I got that's how I was able to really get a lot of business going, is because I was in a military town and everybody there had access to 100% loan from the VA, no down payment. All you got to do is come up with your earnest money deposit, maybe some closing money, but I was really good at negotiating, getting all your closing costs paid. So that wasn't even anything to worry about. So got out the military in 2017 and said, this is it for me. I did 14 years, could not make E6. I'm not even gonna say how many times I took that test. I took that test way too many times. Like, all the people around me, they were like, oh, I took it like 3 times before I made it and stuff. I think I took the first class exam. I think I took the thing 11 times. And it's embarrassing to say that number because, like, were you studying? Were you trying? It's like, it wasn't in me. I was so unhappy in the military. By that time, my baby was 5 or 6 years old, and I had been away from her on and off of deployments for, when did I get there? 2012? For 5 years, I had been on and off in my daughter's life, and I had gotten to a point where I said, you know what, this just isn't for me. And as much as I wanted to go after that goal that they tell us to achieve, you know, going for the next pay grade, put in for officer, you know, go and get all these qualifications, I didn't care, because the one person in the world that I cared about wasn't there. And like, I think back to certain things that I would miss, because my daughter was with me up until she was 19 months old, and that was her time of still crawling. She was getting good with walking. So I miss things like her being right behind my leg and me being able to turn around and have to look to make sure she's there. And I noticed that I would still do those things even though she wasn't there. So I was missing out on my child. I was missing out on being a mom to my baby. And even though she was unexpected, she was a surprise, she's still mine. Yeah, so I got to a point where I just decided I wanted to be a mom, and I didn't want to miss out on anything with my daughter. And as crazy as it may have sounded to other people, with you have 6 more years until you can retire, and it's just like, but I'm not happy. And once you get out and you're a civilian coming out of the military and you start talking to other veterans and you see just how much mental health is a serious issue. It's a lot of my fellow brothers and sisters in arms that have been diagnosed with depression, anxiety. I've been diagnosed with anxiety. And those are the things that we don't even realize are affecting us because of what we had to hide or pretend like we don't feel because we're having to go on a 7-month deployment. So I didn't feel like being in that rat race anymore. I didn't feel like being in Squid Games, the military edition anymore. So I got out, and it has been life-changing ever since. I got out the military in 2017, moved to Houston for a year, and then guilt set in of like, oh, you took her away from her dad, and she was with her father longer than she was with you, and all these things. And I said, okay, I want to make sure that my daughter always has both of her parents in her life. So I did a year. I had a great job working for the state as a voc rehab counselor, and pretty much said I'm gonna quit my job and move from Houston back to Virginia, where we just came from just a year earlier, and I'm gonna get into real estate. So I got into school in March of 19, and I got my license in April, and you couldn't tell me that the world was not mine. The world is yours. Like, I was Al Pacino. Like, that's me, how I felt coming into this. And so I was gung-ho every open house, every time we could sit duty in the office to answer the phones. I had the Google voice line, my regular phone. Like, you would have thought I was a dope chick or something. I was doing things I probably should have been. I had 2 phones like Kevin Gates. And the second phone wasn't ringing like I thought it would have been getting fresh into real estate. So coming into very demanding career of real estate, my phone wasn't ringing quite as much as I felt it should have been, with all of the gumption and the energy that I had as a new agent in the industry. And so I still was a single mom to, at that time, one child, and still needed to bring in more income because we kind of like to eat and she likes snacks. So sometimes I think she lives off of Doritos. I really do. But she's not saying she's hungry, so I guess I'm doing something right. But anyway, I needed to figure out a way to make extra money. And this is how, this is just one of the ways that you know that you're supported by God, the universe, whatever or whomever it is that you acknowledge. For me, that's God. And for me, this was just one way that God was showing you're supported. So whatever it is that you want to do, I got you. I was like, okay, something got to give. So at the time, the company I had went with, the gentleman that was working as a showing agent in the property management section of the company, because you had where you just sold homes, they had the new home division, and then they had the property management section. And so he was a regular agent who did resale, but he was in property. He was being a showing agent for property management, whatever homes they may have had. He would show them, and if they were approved applicants, he would get paid $300 referral fee. So I was like, well, I can show houses to people, and I can make $300 off of getting in a wedding. Like, I'm that person. You can't tell me somebody else did it and not expect me to put my own little funk on it. Or I can do it too. Anything you can do, I can do better. Like, I would have been one of the people on that commercial. And if they had another one, I would do it now. How it ended up working out so crazy is he was leaving, but they ended up hiring 2 of us to come fill his spot. So I don't know if he was just that bomb. Cliff Pickens out in Hampton Roads, Virginia. He might still be in Portsmouth, but Cliff Pickens, I don't know if he was just that amazing or if they really just wanted to have more people to help out. But when Cliff decided to leave, myself and another young lady who we were fresh with our licenses, we showed interest, and that was what we wanted to do. And they hired us on to be the showing agents. So that was $10 an hour to sit and pretty much scheduled to show people properties. And when you go show them these properties, you're already pre-qualifying them as a rental before you ever even show them the house. And if you get an approved applicant, that's $300, right? So it was times where I was making an extra $1,200 a month just getting approved applicants, or from sitting the desk, so that's $400, and then other with the things closing. So it was times I was making seriously $1,200 and $1,600 extra just from sitting in that position. But during that time in property management and showing those homes to people, it gave me the opportunity to see different parts of that area that I never would have turned down those roads. And it just helped me to become more of a resource for anybody moving to the area, because it's a military town. Nobody really even knows about that area unless you've been stationed there. And we all pretty much kind of get in our own little routines of where we live, where we go. So for me, when people would be coming out, I could speak to, oh, well, that's going to be about this long of a drive, or no, you kind of don't want to go over there because that's going to put you further than you really would want to be. But I would not have gotten that experience when I got it had I not stepped into being a showing agent. And that's also a way to be able to make money, which is why I love this world of real estate, because there's always ways to make money. Like, oh, so many ways to make money. So coming into real estate, you are gung-ho about everything. You're wanting to take on the world. And with you being a new agent, you also are like fresh meat in the ocean full of sharks. And you have everybody coming from everywhere wanting to welcome you onto their team, and we're going to be able to do this for you. And oh, you want leads? Oh, you can get as many leads as you want. But it's going to cost you $500 a month, or it's going to cost you whatever. So now you're like, well, I need to make money. And then you're like, scared money don't make no money. So I guess let me just do it and see what happens. I spent $4.99 and then a $200 activation fee just to be able to receive leads. However, and I have to give credit where credit is due, that was where I got my first client. I got my first buyer, and it was seriously cold calling. It was like, hey, we see that you created a profile on whatever, and she actually was legit. There were people that were saying, oh, my daughter must have done it. Nope, I'm not interested. I got so many no's, but when you go to these different trainings and they're telling you, you know, for every, you know, no that you get, you're closer to a yes. And that's exactly what happened. I think I had went through about 12 or 13 phone calls before I found this lady. And I remember our first meeting that we had. That was a 2-hour-long buyer's consultation. And she and I talked and we cried. And she shared her story with me of how she had been beaten by her ex-husband. And pretty much she took her and her 4 children and they came to Virginia, because that's where she felt like she would have safety at. And so in that moment of me having that conversation with that lady, it showed me just how big this really is, of just how many lives you really can impact in this business, in this industry, and everybody has a story. And I was able to play a very small part in the textile, in the whole weaving that is her story. I was able to help this woman find a place for her and her children to have safety and refuge. And when you understand just how big of an impact you're making in people's lives, even if it is just a small little thing, it's like, how can you not enjoy it? How can you not be able to enjoy seeing someone's face light up when you show them this is really what you can do? So for me, that's what makes this so much fun in real estate. So even though, yes, that was $500, $600 that was spent to get leads, it got me a client, which I did get a very nice payday off of that. It got me a client, but it also was money I didn't need to spend. I could have kept my $500 and I could have did something else with that and just, you know, still cold call somebody else. But everybody has to make a decision in their own personal journeys and careers of what they're willing to invest in and what do you think you're going to get the best return off of. And I'm going to tell you, you do not need to spend all that money just to get business. You just don't. You just have to be yourself. Be yourself. All right, so I got my license I went to school in March of 19, got my license in April. So from April all the way to January, from April 2019 to January 2020, I was grinding and I wasn't getting paid, except for the property management. That I was making money off of the property management, but as far as sales, I didn't get my first closing until January 7th of 2020, and that was the lady who I just, you know, she shared her truth with me and made me fall in love with this business. So 2019, real big old goose egg. It was nothing small about how big of nothing I was making in real estate. Selling a house, I just wanted one closing, just one. So yeah, I got that first closing, January 2020, and it was like the floodgates had opened. It didn't seem like it while it was happening, but I got my very next closing that March, and then my very next closing in June, and so by the time that 2020 had closed out, I had closed out at a sales volume of about $2 million. Sales volume is the total amount of home that has been sold. So if you bought a $500,000 house, that's 500,000 sales volume. If you bought $1 million, or you had $1 million and a 500,000, you just did 1.5 million sales volume. So for me, when I closed out 2020, I had closed out at about 2 million sales volume. Fast forward to the end of 2021, I had closed out at 7.2 million in sales volume, which was, if I did 2 million a year before, what's that, more than, like, that was almost 4 times what I had made the year prior. Now, my math might not be right, but my calculator knows how to add it. And it's something like anywhere from 3 to 4 times what I had done the year before. We closed out the year and I was pregnant. I was 4 months pregnant closing out that year, right? And that was what showed me just if it's something that you really want, and if it's something that you're having a good time, it's not gonna be hard to sell yourself to other people because they want to be around that energy. I break up with my son's father, and now I'm 5 months pregnant, and I'm like, you know what? I really don't want to be in Virginia anymore. Virginia is an amazing place. It was an amazing start for my career. It just wasn't where my heart was. I was great at what I was doing. Clearly, I'm making 6 figures, and I was so unhappy because I didn't really want to be there, because I moved back so that my daughter could be close to her dad, not because I wanted to be there. I made the best of what was in front of me, but that wasn't where my heart was. My heart has always been in Houston. My heart always wanted to be down here. And I finally saw an opportunity to take hold of. Originally, I learned about Houston in 2011. I came down, I was, all right, so I was pregnant with Jaden at that time. She was about 3 weeks away from making her entrance into the world, and I had came up here with a friend of mine at the time. Me and her were hanging out tough. And we were like, we want to go up to Houston because she had met this guy that was up here, and I actually had just met a guy online dating. I was bored. What you supposed to do when you're pregnant? Sit down? Well, I'm gonna sit down with my phone. So I met a guy or whatever. So he lived in Houston, and so we both were like, we're gonna go up there and just see these guys that we're dating, I guess you could say. So we came, and I remember the club we went to, I think it's called 6224 or something like that, off of Westheimer, or 6244, something like that. But anyway, when I tell you we pulled into that parking lot and all I saw was Maseratis, Corvettes, Aston Martins, Mercedes. Like, it was just, luxury was just in the parking lot. It was at that moment that I fell in love with the city of Houston. I was like, you know what? This is the place for me. Like, the people in the parking lot got money. So, not that that meant anything, because it's a whole lot of people that their cars might be close to being repossessed. I know what that look like. And they parked in the thing, paying $30, $40 of valet. But when I went to that club with her, yes, I was 3 weeks away from having my daughter and going to the club, whatever. I lived my life in color, as you can see. So, anywho, I just remember that song "Make It Rain" by Travis Porter had came on, and the guy behind the bar had threw all these napkins, and it was like raining napkins in the club, like, make it rain, make it rain. And I was like, oh my God, it's lit here. And I fell in love. It's like, it was almost like I was addicted to this city. And then, of course, I was dating someone who was up here. So every weekend, basically, me and Jaden was on the road coming up. He would come down to Kingsville, because I was stationed in Kingsville, and then we would come back up. So I was getting to see this city, like, coming up, if not every weekend, every other weekend. I fell in love with it. The real estate, the homes were big. You could get land, like, everything was down here. You could be single, you could have a family, you could be green, you could be a unicorn, you can be anything you want to be down here. And it's just like, if you can't make it in Houston, you can't make it anywhere. And somebody like me who comes, and I have ideas that are all over the place. My friends call me scatterbrained all the time, because I am, but it's because I have so many big ideas, but it's just like, where to put that energy. So I had always told myself, whenever I get out the military, I'm moving to Houston. I'm not playing no games, and that's exactly what I did. Got out the military in 2017 and said, this is where I want to be. And by the time that I had gotten out, I think 6 years had passed since I said I was going to move down here. And I went back and forth on what to do for a couple of months, and ultimately made the decision. And I gave everybody, I think, a 3 months heads up that we're relocating across the country. I had my mom was living with me, and Jaden at the time. So that was uprooting her from what had been normal for her for the last 2 years, and now taking my daughter away from her dad. So it was uprooting everybody's life, but it's where I always wanted to be. So 2022, January, made the decision. We're moving out here, and I literally gave myself 3 weeks to make a cross-country move happen. And I am 5 months pregnant doing this, but this is where confirmation from God comes. I remember having a talk with God, and I was like, God, I don't know how this is gonna happen. I don't know how I'm gonna make this move, because the money that was in my account didn't match what I needed to be able to make it happen in my eyes. And I said, but this is what I want. I have to do this before my son is born, because daycare costs too much money, and I need to be making money before he's born so I can afford to pay for daycare. And I'm gonna say January 4th-ish, somewhere in there, I made the decision that we were gonna be leaving from the state of Virginia to relocate to Texas, to Houston, Texas, January 24th, January 30th, somewhere in there. The last week of January, we were gonna be leaving Virginia. That's exactly what happened. And the part about God winking at you, when I finally made the decision, okay, I'm leaving, but when do I even need to leave by? I was like, well, let's start with the real estate school. When do they even have courses coming up? Called the lady, and she told me, she was like, oh, you're in luck. They actually have one more class left at 50% capacity. And it was starting not even a month from when I pretty much was looking to leave. So that's how it turned into having to leave in 3 weeks, was because the real estate school had one more seat open, and it was to start February 4th. And what I didn't know before I went into the program was that it's not a straight through type of thing. It's like you kind of get in where you fit in with the classes. So the way that my classes worked out, it would take me exactly 3 weeks. It would take me less than a month to even get my education requirements met. So because I made the decision, I don't want to be here anymore, I want to go. It don't make sense to anybody else. It don't even make sense to me. I'm 5 months pregnant with a child, and I'm talking about uprooting from where I've been making 6 figures to relocate to a place I have no business at all. And God made a way to where not only are you going to be able to make that move, and I'll get to that in a second, you're going to be able to get into that class when you get there, and you're going to be able to get it done in less than a month, where there was people who had literally been in that program for over 2 and 3 months, just because that's how their classes worked out. And God made it to where mine went straight through. So I finished with the program, took my test in April. I passed one and failed the other, my first time. And I took, I think I took a week or two just to like, all right, Kendall, get your stuff together, and then came back and passed the second portion. I was able to just jump into business exactly like I said I wanted to, and exactly like I said I was gonna do when I made the decision to move out here. 2022, closing out the year, having started that year in January, 5 months pregnant, relocating across the country to a new market that I didn't even have a license in, but I still closed out the year at 4.2 million. And that was 2.3 million was my referral business, and roughly the other 2 million was sales that I did my own. So you can't tell me nothing about myself, okay? You can't tell me what I can and cannot accomplish. You can't tell me what you can and cannot accomplish, because if it's something that you want, you will go after it and you will accomplish it. So excuses is only for people who really don't want results. And we all about results here at Dreams to Reality Homes, okay? My goals that I have for I have a lot of goals, and my therapist actually had to help me cross some of those off, because I put a lot of personal just goals for my own, just because it's what I want to do, not anything income producing. I had those at the top of my list and I really needed to like just shift them to another list, and then we'll just revisit that list later, because right now he was like, you need to eat. And I was like, you know what? You sure are right. I do need to eat. So we're gonna go ahead and get some focus back into what's important, keeping what's important. But my goals this year is really to just learn how to be a better resource to not my clients per se, but just period. There's just so many resources that are out there, and because I do have a major military sphere of influence, coming out to Texas, there's so many benefits of just being in this amazing state. It's not even funny. And I want to be the person who is able to bring those resources to you, because why not? And it makes me stay sharp, and it keeps me on my toes of what's going on in the world. So my goals are just being able to make myself be as knowledgeable about everything that's out there, and being able to help those around me to take advantage of those resources. Because the money is great. I'm not gonna lie, the money is amazing, but the money doesn't keep you happy. But when you can see how you are able to help somebody in their life somehow, then that's what makes you feel better. Thank you for watching The Real Realtor of Houston. I'm Kendall, and I can't wait to see you on the next episode.